What is the true story of the gladiators? Welcome to Collapse, where history comes to life and every video takes you into the destiny of those who have shaped the world. Today, let's follow in the footsteps of those men whose cries and blood marked the arenas of Rome, the gladiators. Mythical figures of an empire that made spectacle a weapon of power. They embodied both the brutality of war and the fascination with glory. But behind the blood-stained sands of the amphitheaters, one question remains: who were these fighters really? Were they mere slaves condemned to die to entertain the people? Or were they adored heroes, stars of antiquity, able to seize freedom at the cost of their courage and blood? But before we embark on a new adventure, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to the channel to not miss anything. Thank you, and bon voyage. The period from 1200 to 200 before Christ marks a decisive turning point for the Mediterranean and its surrounding regions. The adoption of iron, stronger and more widespread than bronze, transforms the production of tools and weapons. New martial elites emerge, consolidating their authority through the prestige of military campaigns and violent rituals. Throughout Eurasia and North Africa, the organization of communities becomes more complex. Iron craftsmanship, trade, and military hierarchies define a new order. On the Tigris and Euphrates, the Assyrians build monumental capitals like Nineveh, imposing their domination through a disciplined army and intimidation. The Achaemenid Persians, in the 6th and 5th centuries before Christ, succeed this power, linking Asia Minor to the Indus with a network of roads and administrative posts. With their sophisticated bureaucracies, these empires paved the way for a new political balance, where displays of strength and the centralization of power foreshadow the global arena into which Rome will later fit. Expansion remains a priority. The Mediterranean sees intensified contacts between Phoenicians, Greeks, and Carthaginians. The Phoenicians, settled on the Levantine coast, create prosperous trading posts like Carthage, which becomes independent and powerful. The Greeks, from sovereign cities like Athens or Sparta, establish numerous colonies in Sicily, southern Italy, and beyond. They export institutionalized athletics in sacred competitions, where the glory of the victor reflects on the entire city. The Carthaginians inherit the Phoenician maritime expertise to forge a commercial empire, often rivaling the Greeks for control of the Western Basin. The Greek-Punic Wars reflect major strategic issues while encouraging the circulation of naval and military innovations. The importance of cults and the sacralization of combat affirm themselves, making sacrifice and rituals a common language. Through these rivalries, the Mediterranean becomes a space of exchanges, where siege techniques, funeral rites, and ideals of bravery mingle, preparing the emergence of a larger imperial theater. Military prestige is expressed through dedications, offerings, and monuments. In Italy, various cultures develop from the Iron Age, including the Etruscans, established north of the Tiber. Their agricultural and commercial prosperity favors the rise of cities like Tarquinia or Cerveteri, known for their painted tombs. These frescoes depict banquets, sometimes accompanied by ritual duels intended to honor the dead. Further south, in Latium, early Latin communities take shape around fortified hills, including Rome. The Samnites, inhabiting the mountains of Samnium, value warrior training and collective honor. The Campanians, often centered on the powerful Capua, practice armed games linked to funeral cults. Thus, combat becomes a means of exalting bravery while honoring ancestors. Alliances, or rivalries between these groups, lead to the emergence of shared martial codes. Animal sacrifices and bloody offerings recall the sacred dimension of violence. The weapons, whether it be the Samnite curved shield or the Etruscan cuirasses, expressed both cultural uniqueness and competitive spirit. Meetings impose arbitrations, the idea of common rules. Following the conquests of Alexander the Great, the Near East undergoes a transformation. The Diadochi, former Macedonian generals, divide the empire and create kingdoms like the Seleucids or the Ptolemies. Hellenization progresses, blending Greek culture with local traditions. The rulers organize vast dynastic festivals, where military parades and theatrical performances assert royal power. Exotic animals, sometimes offered as diplomatic gifts, illustrate dominance over nature. Newly founded cities like Alexandria or Antioch house theaters, libraries, and places of entertainment. Popular gatherings, whether for sports competitions or religious ceremonies, enhance cohesion, while the ruling elite reinforces its aura. This culture of spectacle reaches an unprecedented level. Stone theaters, sumptuous processions, and official banquets become political tools. Displays of power, carefully choreographed, combine cavalry, infantry, and sometimes war elephants. This Hellenistic legacy will indirectly serve as a model for future Roman celebrations. Marital alliances consolidate the influence of dynasties and accelerate exchanges. In pre-Roman Italy, from the late 8th century to the 4th century before Christ, various peoples share the peninsula. The Etruscans, established in Etruria, are renowned for their artistic refinement and religious practices. Further south, in Campania, live communities of Osco origin, such as the Samnites or Campanians. Despite their differences, these groups place great importance on funerary rites, considered a sacred link between the living and the dead. It is within this ritual context that the concept of munus gladiatorum, or the combat presented in homage to the deceased, is born, deemed essential for ensuring the tranquility of the spirit and the city's prosperity. Capua, a powerful Campanian city, occupies a central place in the structuring of these practices. Thanks to its privileged geographical position, it attracts merchants, soldiers, and adventurers from various backgrounds. Speculators understand the interest in providing trained warriors to families wishing to celebrate a funerary munus. Thus is formed a real matrix of combat schools, where not only technique, but also staging is taught. The first lanistae, a term for the masters of these schools, assume the training, food, and logistics of the recruits. Over time, the notion of familia gladiatoria emerges, bringing together a group of fighters bound by a contract and common discipline under its authority. The word munus in Latin evokes both the gift and the duty. Initially, this duty consists of spilling blood as an offering during funerals, as required by certain Etruscan Campanian traditions. Gradually, however, the spectacular aspect prevails, and the munus transforms into a public event. Members of the local elite see in it an opportunity to display their generosity and attract clientele. Offering a sumptuous munus, with several duels, becomes a sign of status and a means to expand political influence. Thus emerges the embryo of a combat industry, where the lanistae rents his gladiators to wealthy families and negotiates their fees. At the dawn of the 3rd century before Christ, Republican Rome begins to distinguish itself with increasingly elaborate funerary customs and ceremonies. The first officially recognized mention of gladiatorial combats, organized in the Roman context, according to historical tradition, dates back to 264 before Christ. This event is said to have occurred during the funerals of 2 members of the gens Brutus, an influential patrician family that chose to honor its deceased with a distinctive martial spectacle. The account, reported by later Roman annalists, describes a fight featuring a small group of fighters, tasked with mimicking the warrior rites of certain neighboring peoples. This first public manifestation, extensively documented by ancient sources, presents a modest number of participants, but it establishes the foundations of a long tradition. These combats are held to celebrate and elevate the memory of the deceased by offering their symbolic blood to the spirit of the ancestors, according to a mentality that considers codified violence as an act of devotion. The Samnites, feared neighbors of Latium, exert a significant influence on the fighting style adopted by the earliest Roman gladiators. Accustomed to mountainous combat and fierce javelins, these peoples possess distinctive equipment, notably including large oblong shields and greaves designed to protect the lower limbs. At the time, they were reputed as fierce warriors, and Rome regarded their style as worthy of imitation. Thus, the first gladiators presented in the arena could bear types of armament directly inspired by this Samnite heritage, giving rise to embryonic categories based on the cultural origins of the weaponry. Due to their geographical proximity to Campania, the Romans also drew from the festive practices of this region, rich in spectacular traditions. The Campanians commonly celebrated various rites by organizing military training in front of the public, accompanied by music and punctuated with war dances. This combination of Samnite martial style and Campanian celebrations fueled the development of an increasingly codified form of spectacle. The expansion of Rome during this period greatly contributes to the rise of gladiator spectacles. As the Republic extends its territories, it captures new prisoners of war from many regions of Italy and beyond, who can be sold as slaves. Some of them, selected for their strength or for the curiosity they generate, are then destined for the role of gladiator and join special troops trained for this purpose. Starting from the 3rd century before Christ, the military campaigns in Campania, Sicily, and against the Gauls significantly increased the supply of fighters received in Rome. Each military victory brings its share of captives, some of whom find themselves integrated into these funeral, then festive, programs. The Roman public, eager for novelty and buoyed by the pride of conquest, sees it as an opportunity to witness exotic duels, featuring fighters with varied origins and styles. Over the course of conflicts, Roman power fuels this burgeoning institution through the continuous influx of captive warriors, accelerating its popularization in society. The venues dedicated to these spectacles initially feature rudimentary arrangements, far from the monumental infrastructures that will emerge later. During the 3rd century before Christ and a good part of the 2nd, these combats typically occur in the Roman Forum, the central plaza dedicated to the public and religious life of the city. Wooden stands and light palisades are erected to delimit the temporary arena, while spectators settle on temporary bleachers or simply stand around the place where the confrontations occur. It is only at the end of the 2nd century before Christ that Rome begins to erect structures entirely devoted to the games, often still made of wood, intended to accommodate an increasingly large audience. The architectural reflection is rudimentary, but it marks the first step toward the future consecration of stone amphitheaters, whose appearance will be felt permanently only at the end of the Republic and especially under the Empire, when the demand for comfort and security will require sturdier walls. These architectural innovations testify to the popular enthusiasm for the Munera and, in parallel, provoke a series of nuanced moral reactions within Roman society. On one hand, the majority of the people is passionate about these confrontations, which they perceive as a natural extension of Rome's martial culture. The crowds extol the bravery of the fighters, recognize their courage, and admire the feats accomplished in the arena. The most ambitious patricians, for their part, take advantage of the public fervor to cement their reputation. On the other hand, more critical voices rise among the intellectual and philosophical elite, concerned about the moral impact these exhibitions might have. The circle of Scipio Aemilianus, adopted grandson of Scipio Africanus, gathers brilliant minds to discuss the validity of these spectacles. The Stoics, in particular, question the virtue of entertainment based on suffering and violence, considering that it diverts people from true wisdom and encourages an unhealthy fascination with blood. This tension between fascination and disapproval, already palpable, will continue to mark the future development of the games in the city. The late Republic marks a crucial turning point in the history of bloody spectacles in Rome, as it is during this time that we see a spectacular urban growth, with more and more organizers seeking political prestige and legal frameworks aimed at curbing the excesses related to gaming distributions. For an international audience, unfamiliar with the complexity of Roman institutions, it is important to note that the Roman magistracy included aediles, who were responsible for urban management, various aspects of public life, and the organization of festivities. The curule or plebeian aediles could thus compete to win the people's favor during subsequent elections by offering gladiatorial shows that were richer, more impressive, and more spectacular than before. This quest for notoriety was part of the broader framework of political competition under the Republic, where every ambitious magistrate wished to display their munificence. In the 2nd century before Christ, the growing urban populations flocked to the forum or designated areas to watch a series of duels, with the number of pairs presented on the poster increasing each year. The Romans sometimes described these programs through posters called programmata, usually painted on walls, indicating the names of the gladiators, the number of animals presented, and the planned order of the fights. This quantitative and qualitative expansion of spectacles then fueled a debate on morality and the limits to set. Many voices, particularly from philosophical circles or the more traditionalist senatorial class, worried about the sumptuous expenses incurred for these events and the extravagance encouraged by demagoguery. The Romans thus established what were called sumptuary laws, i.e., legal frameworks intended to limit luxurious expenses, including the sometimes exorbitant cost of gladiator fights and wild animal hunts. Several of these laws, such as those regarding the number of celebration days allowed, aim to prevent an overly generous politician from buying popular consensus through excessive largesse. Indeed, a magistrate willing to fund a series of spectacular fights could potentially secure the people's support during the next election or when seeking approval for their political projects. Yet, innumerable circumventions were observed. Some aediles presented the expenses under other categories, hid behind figureheads, or simply partially masked the real cost of their distributions. Corruption and oratory skill sometimes overcame the senatorial vigilance, while spectators, won over by the gratuitousness or novelty of the performances, enthusiastically welcomed these discreet infractions. To respond to the massive enthusiasm, new infrastructures appeared and tended to become permanent. Until then, gladiator fights often took place on the Roman Forum, in temporary wooden structures that could be quickly dismantled. The ephemeral stands installed for the occasion did not always offer the best visibility, and their capacity remained limited when the crowd became too numerous. In 70 before Christ, in the city of Pompeii, a permanent stone amphitheater was built, considered one of the oldest surviving monuments of its kind in archaeological history. This innovation responded to the need to provide a secure space for large crowds while consolidating the prestige of the organizing city. The masonry stands, arranged in an ellipse, accommodated several thousand spectators and heralded the multiplication of stone arenas in other cities of the Italian peninsula. From the end of the 2nd century before Christ, Roman urbanism transformed. Ambitious cities aspired to own their own fixed arenas, symbols of permanence and prosperity. Municipalities, seeking recognition, financed part of these constructions or left the initiative to wealthy notables eager to establish their social position. Besides the human gladiators, another element increasingly draws the public's attention: the venationes, which are hunting spectacles involving the killing of wild animals imported from distant provinces or exotic lands. During this late Republic period, Roman expansion into Africa and the East facilitates the arrival of elephants, lions, leopards, and even ostriches or rhinoceroses, depending on the organizer's ability to form alliances with specialized suppliers. The Romans then discover little-known fauna that arouses the curiosity and excitement of urban crowds. However, the logistical cost is significant. These often dangerous beasts must be captured, transported by sea or river, fed in captivity, and trained, if only to allow for a spectacular presentation. Public granaries or private suppliers sometimes took charge of transporting the necessary food. Temporary enclosures, built on the outskirts of cities, served as gathering areas before the animals were led into the arenas to confront professional hunters, or, in some cases, condemned individuals used as makeshift fighters. In Rome, this vogue for exotic beasts becomes a means to stand out politically and emphasize the imperial dimension of the republican regime, even though the empire itself does not yet exist in the strict sense. Among the main players in this flourishing economy are the lanistae, the mercatories venetianum, and the armamentaria, each occupying a specific role in the supply and training chain. The lanista is the entrepreneur who manages a gladiator school, selects and trains the fighters, and rents them out to those wishing to give a munus. He must oversee recruitment, which includes slaves, prisoners of war, and sometimes free volunteers, called auctorati, eager to gain glory and financial rewards. The lanistae also maintain contact networks, allowing them to negotiate with magistrates or private organizers. As for the mercatories venetianum, they specialize in the importation and sale of wild animals. This trade requires solid zoological expertise, knowledge of maritime or land trade routes, and agreements with local hunters in distant regions. The armamentaria, for their part, refer to the workshops and armories where weapons and protections are made or repaired: helmets, shields, swords, without forgetting the devices to handle the beasts. The regular maintenance of the equipment reassures the gladiators who wish to have reliable weapons, just as it reassures the public, always impressed by the quality of the metal and the warrior display. In this microcosm, everyone finds their place, and the ensemble is nourished by the collective passion for grand spectacles. In 73, before Christ, the Roman Republic experiences a resounding episode that still fuels the collective imagination: the revolt led by Spartacus, a Thracian gladiator enslaved in one of the famous Capua combat schools. This establishment belonged to the lanista Gnaeus Cornelius Lentulus Batiatus, a notable figure in organizing spectacles. The city of Capua, located in Campania, south of Rome, was then renowned for its gladiators and training centers. The forced men, often prisoners of war or the condemned, underwent harsh training there to entertain the population during bloody games. Spartacus, more than any other gladiator, would rise against this order imposed by Roman society and become the soul of a servile revolt that would put the entire peninsula on alert, sowing fear up to the highest ranks of the Senate. Spartacus was not alone in this extraordinary venture. Crixus, a Gaul feared for his strength, and Oenomaus, also a Capua gladiator, were two major figures of the uprising. At the time, the military discipline imposed in the ludus enhanced the combat aptitude of men already familiar with violence. In secret, these fighters prepared their escape. They collected kitchen utensils, tools, or simple wooden weapons, which they adapted to make means of defense or attack. The conspiracy remained a significant risk in such a supervised establishment, but Spartacus's determination and his companions' ingenuity allowed them to deceive the guards' vigilance. When they finally managed to escape, their initially modest number quickly grew thanks to the attraction exerted by the promise of freedom. Rapidly, the capital realizes that the situation is spiraling out of control. The escapees are no longer just runaway slaves, but are transforming into a true army of fugitives. Venturing outside Capua, this motley group, consisting not only of former gladiators but also farm slaves and other oppressed individuals, begins an unexpected march. The initial objective remains unclear. Some wish to return to their homelands, while others aspire to prolong their victories. The Roman historian Sallust, who has left a few snippets of information about this uprising, testifies to the scale of the phenomenon. In a few months, Spartacus, Crixus, and Oenomaus recruit thousands of men eager to break their chains. Their prowess against the few Roman contingents sent to suppress them stirs worry among the senatorial elite, which initially fails to grasp the magnitude of the threat. The insurgents' initial victories against small Roman detachments are all the more surprising, as they reveal an unsuspected tactical capability. Although lacking sophisticated armor, standardized equipment, and catapults, Spartacus and his companions excel in ambush and guerrilla warfare. The new recruits, partly from Gallic, Thracian, or even Italic peoples, bring their own combat techniques, enriching the range of martial expertise. Simultaneously, it is said that a rigorous discipline is established within the group, imposed by Spartacus and his lieutenants to ensure cohesion. The spoils captured from Roman soldiers gradually arm the rebels, while provisions flow in through the looting of rural estates and occasional support from local populations exasperated by taxation. Little by little, the fear of seeing this army grow pushes Rome to react more firmly. The year 72, before Christ, marks a turning point. The Senate, worried about the insurgency's constant progress, decides to send real armies to annihilate Spartacus and his allies. Several praetors and consuls, tasked with quelling the rebellion, nevertheless underestimate their opponent's competence. Some suffer humiliating defeats in the southern peninsula, while others get encircled or surprised by unexpected maneuvers. Spartacus shows an undeniable strategic skill, knowing how to leverage Italy's rugged terrain and avoiding direct confrontation when faced with numerically superior forces. However, dissensions appear within the rebel camp, notably between Spartacus and Crixus. One prefers to advance towards the Alps in order to leave Italy. The other wants to continue pillaging Roman territory. These divergences weaken the unity of the revolt, but do not halt the threat. Within this context, the Senate finally mandates Marcus Licinius Crassus, one of the wealthiest men in Rome, to crush this revolt, which has become a nightmare for Roman pride. Crassus, eager to gain political prestige, invests massively in raising troops and restoring discipline among his soldiers. He applies drastic methods, even resorting to decimation, to punish deserters in his ranks, which restores the cohesion the Roman army lacked. Meanwhile, Spartacus tries to maintain the unity of his movement, even as Crixus's faction increasingly splits away. Both groups still achieve success, delivering several setbacks to the Roman forces. However, The decisive confrontation is slow to materialize as Spartacus seeks to avoid pitched battle for as long as possible. Ultimately, the death of Crixus during a confrontation in southern Italy shakes the morale of a portion of the rebels, while Spartacus must manage the political and strategic consequences of this loss. In turn, Crassus launches several encirclement operations, benefiting from superior knowledge of the terrain and better supplies. The Thracian rebel gradually senses the Roman trap closing in and then attempts to break through the enemy lines to advance north. Some sources report that Spartacus might have even considered crossing the Adriatic Sea to reach the Balkans, hoping for support among the Thracian populations. However, Crassus's army, now battle-hardened and reinforced by new troops, eventually imposes the decisive battle of 71 before Christ. The rebels, despite their courage, cannot compete with the Roman military force, which is superior both in numbers and equipment. The final defeat of Spartacus remains a dramatic moment for what many considered a hope for freedom. Although the precise manner of the Thracian leader's death is unknown, tradition suggests that he died weapon in hand, refusing to flee the battlefield. The survivors of the uprising, relentlessly pursued, were punished with implacable severity. Crassus ordered the crucifixion of thousands of prisoners along the Via Appia, the road connecting Capua to Rome, to signify to all the slaves of the peninsula the fate reserved for rebels. This particularly spectacular repression strongly affected people, to the point where some ancient authors saw it as a direct warning message. Roman power remained ready to employ extreme means to ensure the existing social order, even if the revolt had already lost its leaders. Augustus, whose birth name was Caius Octavius Thurinus, became the principal architect of a new political era, following the end of the civil wars that had torn the Roman Republic apart. From 31 before Christ to the period immediately afterward, he took on the task of restoring the Roman people's confidence by imposing a strict moral order applied to both morals and public entertainment. Behind this desire for reform was a need to legitimize his power. He therefore had himself granted the title of princeps, often translated as first citizen, and set about giving a much more official structure to the munera, these gladiatorial exhibitions initially linked to funerals, as well as to the ludi, the public games held to honor the city's gods. The Romans, exhausted by years of internal conflicts, largely welcomed these transformations as a promise of stability and civilizational radiance. The rationalization of the games was one of the essential elements of Augustan policy. In order to control the organization and ensure overall coherence, he established a precise distribution of the munera and the ludi on the annual calendar, ensuring that they did not overlap anarchically. The magistrates in charge of these spectacles had to conform to fixed dates, thus avoiding any unfair competition or excessive opulence aimed at supplanting a political rival. In this context, Augustus relied on legislation known as the Lex Iulia Theatralis, promulgated to establish a rigorous order in the seating allotment within the venues. This law distinguished different categories of spectators, granting senators and knights privileged seating, while lower-ranking free citizens and women were required to sit farther from the arena or stage, in accordance with the strict social value code established by imperial authority. Meanwhile, Augustus implemented financial control measures to prevent systematic one-upmanship in the organization of the munera. Previously, some aediles or magistrates sought to win public favor by funding lavish spectacles with a large number of gladiators, exotic beasts, and expensive sets. Now, a spending cap was established, obliging organizers to adhere to a maximum budget, which was meant to limit displays of prodigality likely to threaten the state's economic stability. This new policy was in keeping with a desire to moralize practices. Instead of witnessing excessive slaughters, the public was invited to view more strictly controlled combats, and the frequency of exhibitions known as sine mission, meaning without the possibility of sparing the defeated gladiator, was gradually reduced. This latter measure aimed to moderate the brutality of the clashes, without depriving the audience of a spectacle of arms that it had enjoyed for several generations. In 29 before Christ, an event marked a decisive turning point in the topography of leisure in Rome: the erection of the first stone amphitheater, financed by the general Statilius Taurus, a close friend and political supporter of Augustus. Previously, there were only temporary structures, often made of wood, to host gladiatorial combats or wild beast hunts. By endowing the city with a permanent building capable of accommodating a large number of spectators, the imperial power demonstrated its total commitment to regulated and controlled events. This amphitheater, whose exact location remains debated by historians, served as a showcase for the new Augustan provisions. Not only did it embody the regime's solidity, but it also allowed for the implementation of legislation regarding the separation of ranks, thereby offering a clearly hierarchized space, symbolizing the new social order upheld by the princeps. Augustus's taste for staging also expressed itself in the organization of naumachii, a kind of naval battles reenacted in artificial basins or in specially arranged areas near the Tiber. In 2 before Christ, the historian Suetonius reports that the princeps had a vast body of water dug not far from the city to stage real maritime confrontations. The ships, often scaled down compared to their original models, were still large enough to faithfully imitate the warships used by the great powers of the time. The participants, recruited from prisoners or convicts, were given more or less authentic weapons, and the public could watch, from stands all around, a true, total spectacle. This type of event, extremely costly and complex to set up, reinforced the aura of imperial power, as it highlighted Augustus's ability to orchestrate in peacetime simulations of conflict that demonstrated Roman superiority over natural elements and potential external enemies. Thanks to these innovations, we witnessed the emergence of a true imperial grammar of entertainment, in which each show, whether gladiatorial, hunting, or naval reenactment, expresses a facet of the new Roman ideology. The princeps, the central figure of this edifice, presents himself as the dispenser of games and guarantor of peace. He assumes the symbolic role of the provider of joy, while clearly marking the boundary between the sacred and the profane. The munera, once linked to the worship of the dead, take on a broader meaning and merge into the civic liturgy of the empire. From mere funerary commemorations, they become a political and social tool, intended to strengthen the authority of the ruling power. The ludi, meanwhile, retain their religious dimension, but integrate into a better defined institutional framework with more transparent management of expenses and rigorous planning of the calendar. This overall mastery, orchestrated by Augustus and his advisors, marks a crucial step in the history of Roman spectacles, as it transforms simple entertainments into tools of propaganda and identity construction, capable of rallying both the elites and the popular classes around the princeps. The Flavians came to imperial power at a critical moment in Roman history, immediately after the fall of Nero in 68. In 69, Vespasian, founder of the Flavian dynasty, took the reins and set out to restore order. His ambition found expression in several grand architectural projects, the most famous of which remains the Flavian amphitheater, known as the Colosseum. Located in the heart of Rome, it was erected on the site of a former artificial lake that belonged to the Domus Aurea, Nero's sumptuous palace. Construction began around 72 and continued under the reign of Vespasian and his sons. The main objective was to provide the people with a vast and monumental space for spectacles, breaking with the old tradition of performances in the Forum or on temporary wooden structures. The Flavian amphitheater adopts an elliptical shape, capable of accommodating more than 50,000 spectators. This silhouette is not just an aesthetic effect, it optimizes visibility and facilitates circulation. The architects planned vomitoria, corridors allowing the public to enter and exit quickly. The structure features distinct levels, each reserved for a social category, and the numbering ensures orderly placement. At the top, a large velarium protects the audience from the sun. Thanks to these innovations, the Colosseum becomes a crowd machine, where people can gather around collective spectacles, making them forget recent tensions. After the death of Vespasian in 79, his eldest son Titus ascends to the throne. Although a tragic fire and the eruption of Vesuvius are trials during his brief reign, Titus manages to officially inaugurate the Flavian amphitheater in the year 80. The festivities last several days, combining different types of spectacular events to captivate the Roman crowd. The inaugural program includes impressive venaciones, these exotic hunts where wild beasts from Africa or the Orient are released into the arena, followed by public executions for criminals or captives of war. The paired gladiator sessions further excite the spectators, who discover for the first time the colossal scale of the building. Titus, eager to make an impression, uses these stagings to consolidate his popularity and to illustrate the generosity of the Flavian dynasty towards the plebeians, offering bread and circuses to the people. When Domitian, the younger brother of Titus, succeeds him in 81, he sets out to further enhance the functionalities of the Colosseum. His most notable contribution is the construction of the Hypogeum, an underground complex made of corridors, cages, and technical rooms. Beneath the arena, traps, winch-operated elevators, and lifts are installed, capable of presenting animals and gladiators directly in front of the eyes of a thrill-seeking public. This engineering feat introduces an unprecedented dramaturgy. Animals appear unexpectedly, fueling collective excitement. The stagehands, hidden in these galleries, maneuver the platforms according to orders, and the element of surprise becomes a true scenic art. Domitian personally invests in the implementation of these devices, seeing them as a means to reinforce the prestige of the Flavian house and to demonstrate imperial omnipotence. In the brand new Colosseum, organizers redouble their ingenuity to offer a continuous spectacle, both violent and grandiose. Each day is divided into several sequences: the morning venaciones, the tortures and executions around noon, then the afternoon apotheosis, marked by gladiator combats. Everything is orchestrated to flatter the power of the current emperor, whose presence in the imperial box is highlighted by the very architecture. The stands turn as one towards him who grants or denies life, symbolized by the simple movement of his hand. Pairs of gladiators succeed one another, sometimes by the dozen, with distinct weapons and styles, offering unprecedented diversity. The public executions contribute to the demonstration, reminding of Rome's authority over criminals and conquered peoples. The Flavians do not limit themselves to the capital. In an empire that extends from Britain to Egypt, the dynamics of urbanization accelerate, and with it, the construction of amphitheaters on the Roman model. In Italy and in the western provinces, Gaul, Germany's Hispania, stone arenas are rising, sometimes more modest than the Colosseum, but modeled on its organizational principles. In North Africa, particularly in the Carthage region, large-scale amphitheaters testify to the desire to offer, even far from the imperial heart, the same total spectacle experience. This standardization of practices helps to spread Roman culture in its most impressive aspects. Everywhere, the ritual of venationes, executions, and gladiatorial duels form a shared cultural cement across an immense territory. To ensure the smooth running of the events, the Flavian administration implements a hierarchical system of management and supervision. The curators, acting on behalf of the state, ensure the maintenance of buildings and adherence to safety standards. Around them are structured, specialized colleges, bringing together the arts, these corporations of artisans and entertainment professionals. Among them are architects, sculptors, painters, costume designers, animal trainers, as well as technicians responsible for machinery. The continuous supply of wild animals also involves a whole network of hunters, transporters, and caretakers. Some beasts are captured in Mauritania or Mesopotamia, then transported by ship or caravan. Security remains a constant concern. Guards control access to the stands, prevent fights, and protect the imperial box. During the 1st and 2nd centuries, Anno Domini, the organization of gladiator contests evolves to adopt increasingly codified forms. The Romans, eager to offer a spectacle that is both spectacular and regulated, implement a series of categories or types of fighters. We then witness the emergence of emblematic duels, such as those opposing the murmillo to the thrax, or the secutor to the retiarius. The aim is to create a scenic balance between complementary combat styles while offering the public the diversity needed to maintain interest during performances. Demobilized legionaries, slaves, and sometimes even free volunteers are therefore distributed based on their morphology, skill, and experience. At the heart of this hierarchical system, each category of gladiator feeds the collective imagination while serving an imperial propaganda objective: to illustrate Rome's power and affirm the supremacy of its public institutions. Normalization thus becomes an instrument of political stability as much as spectacle. The murmillo, recognizable by his large rectangular shield and crest-adorned helmet, gets his name from the murena, a sea fish, due to aquatic decorations once present on his equipment. Opposing him, the thrax finds his origins in Thrace, a region located north of Greece. He wears a helmet adorned with a large protective visor and wields a short, curved sword, the sika, designed to strike unpredictably. The secutor, on the other hand, appears as the natural counter to the retiarius, who does not wear a heavy helmet. The retiarius fights with a trident, a net, and a light dagger, exploiting the mobility and reach of his light weapons to harass his opponent. The secutor is equipped with a helmet with a smooth design, devoid of protrusions, to prevent the net from catching. Other types also stand out, such as the hoplomachus, heir to the Greek hoplites, or the provocator, armed with a medium-sized shield and a longer sword. The equus favors mounted combat. The esidarius uses a chariot, while the Dimachorus wields 2 blades. The scissor is characterized by a weapon shaped like a curved blade attached to the arm, making his attacks particularly formidable. The equipment of each gladiator is part of what is called a visual code, easily identifiable by spectators. The helmets, equipped with crests or masks, often hide the face, thus preserving a form of anonymity and accentuating the theatrical dimension of the fight. The scutum, an elongated shield of legionary origin, protects a good part of the body and characterizes the murmillo or secutor, while the parma, smaller and round, usually accompanies the thraex or hoplomachus. Individual protections include the manica, a kind of sleeve covering the armed arm, and the ochriae, greaves intended to defend the shins. As for the weapons, they reflect the diversity of styles. The gladius, a kind of short sword wielded at close quarters, contrasts with the trident of the retiarius, designed to strike at a distance. The net employed by the latter completes a light yet remarkably effective arsenal. Each piece of equipment thus plays a precise role in the overall aesthetic and strategy adopted by each category of gladiator. In the heart of the arena, the presence of professional referees, known as summa rudis and secunda rudis, ensures the adherence to the rules of combat. Equipped with sticks called rudis, these officials intervene to separate the opponents during overly chaotic grapples or to sanction infractions such as forbidden blows or improper use of equipment. The summa rudis, often more experienced, is responsible for validating the final outcome of the duel, while the secunda rudis assists with game stoppages and warnings. In addition to these referees, one can sometimes find clappers, called lodiceni, who rhythmically encourage the fervor of the fight by clapping their hands. Musicians, stationed around the arena, also accompany the duel's progression with wind or string instruments. This auditory staging guides and supports the rhythm of the spectacle, creating an immersive atmosphere where each assault is amplified by the resonance of the audience and the roll of the drums. The outcomes of a gladiator fight do not systematically lead to the death of one of the protagonists. On the contrary, a set of modalities defines the duel's outcome, reflecting both the will of the sponsor, called editor, and the condition of the defeated fighter. Victory, or victoria, is often accompanied by the awarding of crowns, palms, or other honorary distinctions. In some cases, when the defeated gladiator has fought valiantly and remains in a condition to continue a career, the editor can grant the missio, in other words, grace. Another situation, rarer, is the stands misses, where the loser, still standing and without mortal wound, is acquitted for having met the requirement of a combat, worthy in the eyes of the public. Finally, the damnatio is the most severe outcome, reserved for extreme circumstances, such as a serious breach of discipline or manifest dissatisfaction from the crowd. However, in the majority of encounters, death is not the primary aim, as keeping an experienced gladiator alive remains a valuable investment for the organizer. The question of thumb gestures, often popularized by cinematic representations, generates many debates among historians. The enduring image of an audience demanding the defeated's death by lowering or raising the thumb stems in part from late interpretations and simplifications. Ancient sources remain somewhat ambiguous regarding the precise meaning of these gestures. Some texts suggest that a thumb turned towards the chest could indicate a request for clemency, while others mention an outstretched arm gesture with hidden thumb, signifying life preservation. Reliefs and mosaics from the Roman era remain cautious on this subject, rarely showing stands, voting the death or sparing of a gladiator. Large areas of uncertainty thus remain, allowing for various hypotheses. This ambiguity feeds the collective imagination, where the figure of the ruthless judge with a thumb pointing downward has established itself as a Hollywood stereotype rather than a faithful reflection of ancient reality. In the context of these spectacles, the preservation of the gladiator's life assumes a carefully managed economic importance. Training a competent fighter requires particularly serious resources, and each severe injury can compromise the operation's profitability. Organizers strive to calibrate the duration of confrontations, manage rest periods, and stage dramatic pauses to maintain public attention without risking excessive bloodshed. Referees also intervene to stop duels when the situation becomes too dangerous, creating a controlled fighting environment. This caution doesn't prevent accidents, but it limits losses and preserves the human capital that the most renowned gladiators represent. Antique entertainment thus finds its balance between public excitement and the imperatives of an economy based on spectacle. Behind the splendor of gladiatorial combats, a complex universe was organized in the Roman Empire from the 1st to the 2nd century. The ludi, or gladiator schools, formed the essential foundation of these spectacles' popularity. In these establishments, each aspirant learned to wield the gladius, a short sword emblematic and suited to the theatrical setting of the arena. Training took place in front of the palace, a wooden post, to perfect movements and strikes. Without these schools, the logistics of the confrontations could not have existed, as discipline, technique, and endurance reigned at the heart of the gladiator's craft. Instructors, called doctores or magistri, corrected posture and regulated exercises. They taught precise striking, prompt dodging, and endurance management in prolonged duels. Sparring sessions with the rudis, a lighter wooden sword than the gladius, reduced the risk of injury during training. Each one repeated moves and sequences rigorously, as even the slightest mistake in a real situation could be fatal. Absolute discipline was expected, both in terms of techniques and obedience. Thus were built formidable fighters, able to face the crowd and their peers under the cheers. The lanistae, a feared entrepreneur, invested in the purchase or rental of gladiators. He managed their accommodation, sustenance, and supervision. Contracts concluded with the aediles or magistrates, organizing the spectacles, ensured the school tangible income. The victories of his gladiators elevated the establishment's reputation, attracting more recruits and patrons. A shrewd negotiator, the lanistae carefully assessed the health, experience, and potential of each one. A prized champion could be rented at a high price, increasing the school's prestige. This economy of blood relied on the lanistae's skill, authority, and strategy. Gladiators came from various backgrounds. Many of them were slaves, brought from military campaigns or sold for debts. Others, called octorati, joined voluntarily, sacrificing their status to receive a salary or erase a debt. Despite scorn from high society, some saw the arena as a chance for earnings. If they won enough victories, they could forge a reputation and receive favors from dignitaries. However, this choice degraded their rank, as Roman law considered the gladiator profession as shameful. Far from the heroism of legionnaires, these fighters struggled to survive and hoped, maybe, to become rich. Health was crucial in this universe. The Medici Gladiari took care of wounds, fractures, and the general fitness of each fighter. Infections were dreaded, necessitating frequent cleanings with wine or vinegar and the application of ointments. If stitching was needed, painful sutures were performed. Schools invested in these treatments to avoid losing costly gladiators. Quick returns to training were important, as the lanistae did not want to immobilize a potential asset for long. In the arena, every injury posed a risk, but also an investment to maintain the school's reputation. Contrary to the epic image of the Roman soldier, gladiators followed a predominantly plant-based diet. They were nicknamed hordearii, or barley eaters, because they mainly consumed grains and legumes. Doctores believed that an extra layer of fat reduced the severity of injuries. A little meat was occasionally included in the menu, but in small quantities. This diet preserved endurance without aiming for explosive strength. Archaeological studies also confirm the abundance of plant foods in their diet. It was a choice dictated by effectiveness, not indulgence. Daily routine in the ludi began early. Gladiators trained in basic exercises, running, shield handling, and muscle strengthening. They needed to develop endurance, flexibility, and agility, essential for dodging blows. Doctors also monitored mental cohesion, believing that morale influenced performance. Tests of toughness were often imposed, such as carrying weights or repeating attacks against the palace. Gradually, the mastery of the gladius refined to include more advanced techniques. Everything was timed to gauge each one's progress and address weaknesses before the next spectacle. Funeral inscriptions found give us information on the age, achievements, and nicknames of these fighters. In many cities, the memory of a champion was honored by erecting a stele mentioning their victories. Nicknames, often inspired by divine or heroic figures, served to magnify their aura: Mercurius for speed, Atlas for strength. These inscriptions reflect the popularity of the arena, where those who impressed the public were glorified. The steles also recalled each gladiator's origin, showing the diversity of their recruitment. Thus, a single ludus could host men from distant lands. Funerary colleges were sometimes formed to organize solidarity among gladiators. They funded the funerals of a deceased comrade and supported his family. This mutual aid prevented a dead person from fading into anonymity and strengthened the cohesion of the school. In Roman culture, piety towards the deceased was of great importance, especially for socially marginalized categories. Families found comfort in seeing the community gather funds or orchestrate a ceremony in honor of the deceased. Such practices revealed a sense of solidarity in a world often deemed brutal. Despite their infamous status, gladiators formed a brotherhood. Glory crowned the established gladiators. The editor of the spectacle sometimes offered bonuses, money, jewelry. Laurel, silver, or gold crowns distinguished a champion. Some received gifts commensurate with their value in the eyes of the public. The prestige benefited the entire troupe, as a famous gladiator reflected glory on his school. Sometimes admirers took a liking to a favorite, offering gifts and praises. The lanistae exploited these successes by negotiating higher fees. Each victory also helped forge the legend of an athlete, fueling the collective imagination. The most coveted reward remained the libertas, symbolized by the rudis, the wooden training sword. Receiving the rudis signified the end of obligations, an emancipation offered to the gladiator deemed worthy enough, whether slave or octoratus. Some continued to fight after obtaining this freedom, for the love of success or to increase their income. However, the final decision belonged to the game organizers, or the lanistae, concerned with not losing a star whose presence attracted the crowd. Thus, the rudis was not just a trophy, but a passport to a new life. At dawn, when the amphitheater stands begin to fill, the crowd eagerly awaits the start of the venations. These staged hunts, scheduled before the gladiatorial duels, showcase a wide variety of exotic animals captured at the far reaches of the empire. Lions and leopards sent from North Africa, bears brought back from the European mountains, ferocious boars roaming the Italian forests, and sometimes even ostriches from the Saharan zones, all converge on the capital for the spectators' enjoyment. This heterogeneous fauna travels thanks to an impressive imperial logistics system, mobilizing expert hunters, animal merchants, and ships designed to transport dangerous beasts. Their capture and then their transfer to Rome reflect the extent of Roman domination. Each exotic creature, removed from its natural environment, testifies to the economic and military power capable of reaching the most remote lands. The Venationes, therefore, inspire public awe, eager to witness this spectacular display of subdued nature. Unlike traditional gladiators, these specialized hunters do not all follow the same training. The bestiarii mostly face animals considered particularly dangerous, like lions. They wear little armor to maintain their agility and prefer quick harassment to frontal confrontation. The Venatores, on the other hand, devote themselves to longer pursuits, sometimes aiming for the spectacular capture of a bear or a boar, which they surround in a coordinated manner. Traps are set, palisades, light pits, or even baits intended to focus the animal's attention. The goal is not necessarily to kill the animal outright, but to keep the audience in suspense. Gestures, timing, and strategy matter as much as the final outcome, since a successful venatio is recognized by the variety of scenes presented. The Romans, in fact, appreciated the theatrical dimension of these hunts. Each confrontation, punctuated by music and cheers, becomes a small, dramatic act. This obsession with spectacle helps to make the arena a place of collective fascination. Beyond the exotic exhibit, these Venationes carry strong political value. The Roman Empire asserts its capacity to dominate not only the conquered peoples, but also the entire animal kingdom. Each beast displayed in the arena evokes a distant province. A lion from Numidia embodies the raw power of Africa. A bear from Thrace recalls the northern border's extent. Domination is displayed in front of a public that sees these creatures as living proof of the vastness of Rome's possessions. This display of power is tinged with a certain cultural and moral pride. The Roman civilization, considered superior, has succeeded in subduing species that, in their natural habitat, remain formidable and uncontrollable. Thus, Venationes appear as a political language. Organizing such hunts affirms prestige and magnanimity, demonstrating that one can entertain immense crowds while maintaining order. For within the arena, safety is ensured, and the animal is always ultimately defeated. Often, these representations draw the attention of foreign emissaries, sent to gauge Roman power. However, this relentless quest for extraordinary creatures causes costs to rise exponentially, especially from the 2nd century Anno Domini. Provincial governors complain about having to provide an increasing number of beasts whose capture requires substantial human and material resources. In Africa, the progressive scarcity of lions in certain areas forces more distant expeditions. Specialized merchants take advantage of this growing demand, setting high rates for each successful shipment. It's not uncommon to spend colossal sums to obtain several dozen flamboyant animals destined for the spectacle. Municipalities, eager to flatter the populace and compete with Rome's splendor, engage in wild bidding wars, sometimes borrowing at interest to finance the event. This surge in costs creates budgetary tension that is felt even in the Senate. Some senators decry it as outrageous waste, while others see maintaining this splendor as necessary to preserve the city's greatness and consolidate their own popularity. Despite everything, public fervor fuels this constant one-upmanship. In this context, imperial authorities attempt to sporadically regulate the holding of venations. Sumptuary laws seek to cap spending on hunts, limit the total number of animals, or even impose rest periods on overexploited provinces. Yet, these measures often struggle to be applied. Local elites, fearing to disappoint the public, sometimes bypass regulations by partnering with traffickers or concealing the real cost of a venatio. The emperor himself, concerned with gaining the crowd's favor, sometimes turns a blind eye to these excesses. Furthermore, the popular passion for these exotic hunts proves difficult to curb. In the face of spectators' enthusiasm, any retreat would seem an admission of weakness. Thus, the fascinating demonstration of power offered by the Venationes persists, fueling Rome's renown, but also revealing the extent of its contradictions. Between the dazzling assertion of its hegemony and the financial pitfalls it generates, the city is torn between its taste for triumph and the economic realities of the expanding empire. Despite a few moralization attempts, the public's appetite for these exhibitions remains lively, ensuring the perpetuation of a lavish ritual. The Day of Games, or Dies Ludorum, unfolds in 3 carefully scripted acts. At dawn, the crowd makes its way to the amphitheater, equipped with tesserae, those small wooden or bone tickets that indicate everyone's seat. Senators and magistrates sit closest to the arena, followed by knights, then the people in the high bleachers. Cohorts ensure order is maintained, while excitement grows to the sound of wandering musicians. At noon, the spectacle transforms. It is the hour of judicial punishments, where the condemned, often referred to as noxii, are executed publicly. They may be common criminals, prisoners of war, or rebellious slaves. To accentuate the solemn aspect, some punishments are presented as mythological tragedies. The condemned, adorned in costume, meets a fate similar to figures such as Prometheus or Icarus. Executions are sometimes inflicted by fire, crucifixion, or exposure to beasts. Although philosophers condemn the cruelty of these scenes, they remain for the majority of Romans an extension of justice. The cohorts monitor the spectators' reactions, as sometimes pity arises or indignation surfaces, particularly if a religious detail offends the public. This moment evokes intense emotions, whether of disgust, terror, or sinister fascination. After a brief respite, the third phase begins. The afternoon sees the organization of gladiator duels. Earlier, program posters displayed in the city announced the list of pairs and their track records, as well as the name of the editor, the wealthy individual who funds the event. The Romans know well the different categories of gladiators. The myrmillo, equipped with a large shield and a helmet adorned with a marine motif. The thraex, armed with a curved sword and a small shield. Or the retiarius, who fights with a net and trident. Each possesses their style, strategic gestures, and the balance of forces depends on the chosen pairing. Spectators place bets, compare the strengths of each combatant, and await the decisive moment when one of the 2 masters of arms takes the advantage. At the start of the afternoon, matches sometimes pit young, lesser-known recruits against each other, gradually warming up the atmosphere. Then come the stars, capable of electrifying the assembly. The stands rumble, rhythmically accompanied by percussion, and supporters of a champion famous for his previous victories come to life. The frescoes discovered in Pompeii testify to this fervor. They feature graffiti exhorting a gladiator, praising his bravery, or extolling his physique. The referees, the summa rudis, and the secunda rudis ensure the regularity of the fight, pointing out irregular blows or demanding the separation of opponents when one finds himself in excessive difficulty. The outcome of the duel is not always fatal. If the defeated has shown courage, the editor may grant the missio, the pardon, and the gladiator may fight again another day. However, if the public, stimulated by the drama, demands execution, these calls may be heeded. The final signal can take the form of a thumb gesture, although ancient sources contradict each other on its exact meaning. The ultimate power resides with the editor, holder of the funding and authority, who ultimately decides the fate of the man on the ground. In the stands, social stratification is clearly visible. Senators, dressed in tunics with a purple stripe, occupy the closest seats, while the knights are just above them. The plebeians are concentrated higher up, where enthusiasm is often louder. Women are present, although they sometimes have specific areas. Children, meanwhile, discover the reality of Roman life, observe the glory of certain fighters, and understand how much courage is a valued asset. These popular gatherings also attract foreign merchants, selling fruits, cakes, or amulets, taking advantage of a large and diverse audience. This crowd requires complex organization. The distribution of tesserae fixes each spectator's place, and the vomitoria, those access corridors, prevent jostling. In intense heat, large awnings, called velaria, can be stretched above the stands to provide some shade, while vendors circulate with water or watered-down wine. The cohorts remain vigilant, ready to intervene in case of disorder. Some philosophers criticize the popular frenzy around these games, lamenting the staging of violence. Yet, the majority of Romans see in these entertainments a social cement, where honor, bravery, and loyalty are expressed under the eyes of a varied audience, including women, children, and foreigners. The day of games often closes in an electrified atmosphere when the sun sets and the final battle elicits deafening cheers. The winners sometimes receive palm crowns, purses, or jewelry offered by the editor. The jubilant crowd discusses the day's highlights, debates the referee's decisions, and already anticipates the upcoming confrontations. In the corridors, you encounter happy bettors who have won some coins, while the losers seek to forget their bad luck over a final drink. The children, tired but amazed, leave with lasting memories. The grace of a gladiator, saved in extremis, the roar of a lion in the morning, or the tragedy of a condemned Noxius at noon. The musicians gradually stop playing, and the cohorts escort the crowd towards the exits. For many foreign visitors, these games remain in memory as the most vivid expression of Roman power, a formidable mix of cruelty and magnificence. The lamps then light up, slowly, belatedly. The Roman presence in the western provinces, notably in Gaul and the Germanies, profoundly transformed the local cultural landscape, particularly through the introduction of amphitheaters and gladiatorial shows. In Nimes, in the Roman province of Gallia Narbonensis, an imposing building was constructed in the 1st century of our era, a testament to the growing prosperity of this Roman colony. The inscriptions preserved on steles or foundations inform us of the participation of gladiators from the region, sometimes mentioned by their ethnonyms or nicknames. Some embarked on this career to pay off debts, others to taste personal fame. The city of Arles, also located in the southern part of Gaul, had a monumental amphitheater, capable of accommodating several thousand spectators. Thanks to excavations undertaken since the 19th century, numerous decorative elements and graffiti attesting to the popularity of the fights have been uncovered. In Trier, the former administrative center of Lower Germania, the building, less spectacular than those of Nimes or Arles, nevertheless served as a gathering point for the civilian population and legionnaires in garrison. The spread of these arenas was a response to the desire to consolidate Rome's political and cultural footprint. The authorities encouraged the establishment of shows capable of rallying local populations while symbolizing the power of the Eternal City. Equipment workshops, responsible for forging helmets, shields, and weapons, played a crucial role. In the course of military campaigns, the garrisons carried clothing, training methods, and qualified personnel to organize the munera. Thus, a relative standardization of combat styles and gladiator categories can be observed, even though some local specificities remained, whether in terms of musical instrumentation or shield shapes. In Britain, conquered under Emperor Claudius from 43 Anno Domini, the creation of amphitheaters often went hand in hand with the establishment of fortresses. In Caerleon, Wales, a vast military complex housed an oval amphitheater dating from the late 1st century, used by both troops and the civilian population during official ceremonies. Chester, known as Diva Victrix, also had an amphitheater, whose remains show several successive phases of construction, proof of sustained interest in this symbol of Roman culture. The armies stationed there sometimes recruited gladiators, or bestiarii, from among their auxiliaries, who saw in it an opportunity to rise socially or to gain favors from their officers. In Africa, Proconsularis Carthage, refounded after 146 before Christ by Julius Caesar and then Augustus, quickly became a major center of Roman commerce and culture. A diverse population, blending Phoenician heritage and traditions from Italy, adopted the customs of the arena. Mosaics and inscriptions testify to prestigious venaciones, which showcased wild animals captured in sub-Saharan Africa, highlighting Rome's domination over a vast geographic area. In El Jem, in present-day Tunisia, an amphitheater built at the start of the 3rd century, stood as one of the largest in the Roman world, capable of accommodating nearly 30,000 spectators. This impressive structure illustrated the region's economic power, renowned for its olive oil production exported to Italy. In the sectors of Numidia, the installation of arenas reflected the desire to structure the conquered territory. Influential families, sometimes from the Numidian nobility, competed in organizing munera to establish their local prestige. Gladiators came from diverse backgrounds: prisoners of war, volunteers seeking income or citizenship. Dedicatory inscriptions in Latin, found at several sites in the Maghreb, hailed the prowess of these fighters or the generosity of the notables who funded the event. The supply chains for weapons and accessories, fueled by active trade on the southern Mediterranean shore, nurtured a cosmopolitanism unique to the arena. Everywhere, helmets and protections supposedly identical were worn, with decorative variations reflecting local artisanal creativity. In the east, the metropolis of Antioch, located in present-day Turkey, stood out for its economic wealth and cultural tradition from the Hellenistic period. Entertainment structures were influenced as much by ancient Greece as by Rome. Gladiator inscriptions are fewer in number than in Gaul or Italy, but they mention regular combats and strict municipal control, exercised by the boule ensuring the proper conduct of these entertainments. Some fighters, coming from other regions like Phrygia, introduced more exotic practices, which were attempted to be reconciled with the prevailing Latin codification. In Ephesus, several funeral steles of gladiators have been found, sometimes recounting their victories in various cities of Asia Minor. This phenomenon indicates the existence of spectacular tours organized by traveling lanistae who signed contracts in each host city. The gladiatorial schools, supervised by veterans of various origins, enriched the technique of local fighters. Sometimes, civic festivals borrowed Greek elements such as boxing contests, while armed duels followed strict Roman rules, ensured by referees. Sources also mention the use of hybrid music, combining Oriental instruments and martial Latin rhythms, to create an ever more solemn and immersive atmosphere. This mobility between provinces was supported by a network of roads and ports controlled militarily, ensuring the security of movements. Lanistae, accompanied by their gladiators and medical or technical personnel, traveled with sometimes cumbersome equipment, weapons, set pieces, even cages for wild animals used in scenic hunts. In each city, they made arrangements with the aediles, settled in the local infrastructure, whether it was stone-built or temporarily erected for the occasion, and offered the public a piece of Roman culture while adapting to regional sensibilities. Over the course of these travels, exchanges took multiple forms. An admiring gladiator of opponent parades could purchase a specific helmet model, while others would adopt a new style of protection discovered along the way. Some regions thus developed a recognized specialty. Germania was renowned for the strength of its steel, the East for the ornamental finesse of its workshops. Gradually, a form of standardization of the gladiatorial language emerged, which everywhere referred to the same idea of bravery, scenic honor, and regulated spectacle. In some cities of Gaul, funding for these spectacles relied on the generosity of local elites, eager to gain popularity and showcase their loyalty to Rome. In Nimes, aristocratic families offered donations to enlarge or restore the stands, while in Lugdunum, wealthy notables funded food distributions. In the Germanies, military elites could also take over, organizing celebrations in honor of a victory or the arrival of an imperial dignitary. This practice of euergetism, inherited from the Greek world, extended throughout the Roman sphere, making the multiplicity of events possible. The amphitheaters, whether modest or imposing, became as many showcases for these provincial patrons, proud to participate in the building of lasting infrastructures. This dynamic was reflected in the composition of the audience, often very diverse. Merchants from neighboring regions took advantage of the games to do business, while travelers, soldiers on leave, or diplomats discovered an entertainment that could profoundly affect their sensibilities. The accounts of Greek or Jewish writers like Flavius Josephus sometimes testify to a fascination with military choreography, sometimes to a rejection of bloodthirsty cruelty. The provincial arena demonstrated Rome's unifying power, connecting distant territories into a single political body. This cohesion, although uneven, explained the empire's ability to impose a common culture, where gladiators and venations held a central place. The female gladiators, sometimes called feminae pugnantes, represent an overlooked facet of Roman history. Although the figure of the gladiator traditionally evokes a masculine universe, archaeological discoveries and literary sources hint at the presence of women in the arena. Through inscriptions, reliefs, and indirect accounts, historians have been able to confirm that a few rare women fought according to rules similar to those imposed on men. In the Roman imagination, this female participation carried great symbolic weight, as it defied both codes of modesty and social hierarchy. It is essential to emphasize the rarity of these female fighters. They were not common, and their appearance often represented a special spectacle, intended to leave a strong impression during festivities. One of the most notable elements of their history is the formal prohibition decreed by Emperor Septimius Severus around the year 200, which aimed to restrict the presence of women in the arena. Aside from the imperial ban, the condition of female gladiators remained closely tied to the notion of infamia, a legal status that designated a violation of civic honor. In Roman society, any individual considered infamous saw their civil rights restricted and often lost the respect of part of the community. Male gladiators, although admired for their bravery, already bore this mark of infamy, as they had entered a profession deemed dishonorable. For women, the impact could be even harsher, as participation in the arena transgressed the conventional roles of the Roman matrona. Yet, infamia did not prevent some female fighters from enjoying considerable popularity, especially among spectators seeking thrilling experiences. Romans realized that a woman who chose to fight was challenging a powerful taboo. This act, perceived as spectacular, sometimes earned the female gladiator enthusiastic applause, enhancing her exceptional aura. The social statuses of female gladiators could vary, ranging from slaves condemned to participate in the games to free women voluntarily choosing the path of the octoritas, that is, the contractual engagement in a gladiatorial school. Slaves, subject to the authority of the lanistae, had little choice. They had to fight or face severe penalties. Those condemned to death, known as damnati ad ludum, were often sent to the arena to atone for their real or supposed crimes through blood. Free volunteers, on the other hand, joined the arena sometimes for financial reasons, sometimes out of a desire for fame and challenge. However, embarking on this career led to civilized defiance. Being a male or female gladiator meant giving up part of the rights and respect recognized by the community. Nevertheless, a certain number of these volunteers sought in the arena a form of recognition or social ascent, however minimal it might be. Fame, however, was conceivable for those who managed to accumulate several victories, akin to certain male gladiators who became true popular idols. Nicknames could emerge, evoking the fighter's bravery or speed, and gifts poured in from admiring spectators. Graffiti discovered on the walls of Pompeii illustrate this fervor. There are mentions of famous male fighters, such as Hermes or Flamma, but it is not excluded that a particularly skilled gladiatrix might have inspired similar praises. In some cases, it is said that fans would offer jewelry, crowns, or even sums of money to gain the favor of their idol. This popular recognition, although extremely gratifying, was always accompanied by the awareness of belonging to a marginal category. The contradiction between the public's enthusiasm and the social condemnation continued to hover, reinforcing the ambiguous nature of this fame. In daily life, gladiatrices led a communal life within the ludi, these gladiatorial schools where training, discipline, and psychological preparation were organized. There were instructors, sometimes called doctores, responsible for training recruits according to specific combat techniques. The women who fought were not exempt from these demands. They had to train diligently, adhere to strict schedules, and accept the inherent risks of sparring sessions where wooden weapons were used initially to minimize serious accidents. Numerous indications suggest that a form of brotherhood or sisterhood sometimes developed among these fighters, bound by the same precarious condition and the same passion for spectacle. They also shared common spaces for rest and care. Funerary colleges, which handled burials, played a central role for those without family ready to assume these expenses. Beyond daily life, the participation of gladiatrices in games often depended on the financial support of patrons or politicians eager to showcase their generosity. The aediles, responsible for organizing public spectacles, could see the presence of female fighters as a way to distinguish themselves from their rivals and attract crowds. At the same time, women who ventured into the arena faced a greater economic risk when they were free, as debt could quickly place them under the tutelage of a lanistae. In this context, some patrons agreed to buy back their debts or negotiate favorable contracts, thus forging sometimes close dependency ties. This setup once again highlighted the paradoxes of the era. While gladiatrices might be cheered by the crowd, they remained at the mercy of an elite capable of promoting them, or making them disappear from the circuit. The financial aspects only exacerbated the ambiguities related to their status. When Commodus, son of the philosopher Emperor Marcus Aurelius, ascended the throne in Anno Domini 180, he inherited a geographically vast Roman Empire, but one weakened by wars on several fronts. Unlike his predecessors, he quickly displayed a boundless passion for the arena, to the point of donning the gladiator's costume himself and performing in carefully orchestrated combats. Ancient sources, including the historian Herodian and the anecdotal account of the Historia Augusta, describe a ruler eager for thrilling experiences, rushing to fight under the eyes of a stunned public. The confrontations in which he participated were, however, secured. His opponents were often weakened, sometimes disarmed, and any minor injury he received caused the court to tremble, anxious to avoid any major risk to the imperial personage. Indeed, it is reported that Commodus used weapons with blunted blades or resorted to accomplices tasked with feigning resistance. This self-staging scandalized part of the Roman aristocracy, accustomed to emperors maintaining a ritual distance from bloody entertainments. Senators regarded this gladiatorial theatricality as an affront to the dignitas, a fundamental value embodying the gravity and respect due to one's rank. Rumor has it that Commodus demanded to be acclaimed as a reborn Hercules, wearing the skin of the Nemean lion and carrying the club, legendary symbols of heroic strength. Some notables see this as a megalomaniac drift, fueled by the flattery of courtiers seeking favors. In these spectacles, the empire discovers a prince, ready to cross the barriers between spectator and actor, blurring the age-old boundary that separated the higher orders from the performers in the arena. This behavior, perceived as unsettling, demonstrates Commodus's desire to assert his virile strength in the eyes of the people, but also his search for direct contact with the urban plebeians. Far from the strict codes of senatorial politics, he forges an image of a popular champion, which shocks high society and reinforces the elite's mistrust. In terms of security, Commodus's reign is accompanied by heightened surveillance around the emperor when he performs in public. Organizers exercise increased caution to avert any risk of assassination amidst the tumult of the stands, with the prince's loyal followers watching every suspicious movement. Aside from logistical aspects, the scandal surrounding Commodus in the arena also stems from his propensity to humiliate certain renowned gladiators as if to assert his natural superiority. Sources mention gratuitous murders, opponents unable to defend themselves, and macabre scenes that instill fear among spectators of higher rank. Even if the plebeians sometimes find excitement in it, the aristocracy sees a political danger. An emperor who transgresses these limits can hardly rule by consensus. The plots, revealing a worried elite, eventually catch up with him in 192, when Commodus is assassinated. His fondness for the arena, which had become a source of discord, leaves in the empire the memory of a ruler who blurred the distinction between imperial majesty and the violence of the ludus. Long before Commodus, Emperor Trajan had already used the arena as a powerful propaganda tool. Originally from Italica and Hispania, Trajan conquered Dacia, located north of the Danube, over 2 successive campaigns. This victory brought immense wealth to the empire, in the form of gold and silver mines, and symbolically marked Roman military power. To celebrate the event, the sovereign organized colossal games in Rome, intended to impress the population and magnify his triumph. According to estimates reported by Cassius Dio, more than 10,000 gladiators participated in the festivities, an astounding number for the time. These grandiose spectacles took the form of a demonstration of munificence, an imperial virtue that consists of lavishly redistributing the conquered resources. In the arena, the people were offered a selection of combats, exotic beasts captured in the provinces, and historical reenactments meant to sing the Roman glory. Trajan presented himself as a generous military leader, eager to perpetuate the republican tradition of gift-giving to the city while consolidating his legitimacy. Through these spectacles, the message was clear. The victory over Dacia was not only a personal success, but also an opportunity to cement the unity of the empire around the imperial figure. Stelae, bas-reliefs, and the famous Trajan's Column, erected in 113, tell of the conquest and legitimize the prince's power. Meanwhile, the splendor of the games in the amphitheater acted as a direct vector of popularity. Crowds applauded, sang the emperor's praises, and spread the image of a prosperous and conquering reign throughout the Roman world. Trajan also attached great importance to the material organization of these events, mobilizing the great families and officials to ensure the supply and transport of the troops. Historians highlight the presence of gladiators from diverse lands, revealing the extent of the logistics deployed. The bestiaries tasked with gathering lions, panthers, rhinoceroses, or elephants had to compete in ingenuity to transport so many exotic animals. The morning venation impressed spectators, who discovered Rome's power not only over men, but also over distant fauna. In the afternoon, gladiator duels offered a more traditional spectacle, rooted in the exaltation of Roman virtues. Through this plurality of stagings, Trajan constructed a unifying discourse. The empire seized and dominated the world's diversity while remaining a welcoming home for conquered peoples. His successor, Hadrian, then adopts a more measured posture, preferring a balance between splendor and order. He is often nicknamed the traveling emperor because he travels through the provinces for many years to strengthen the cohesion of the empire, launch ambitious constructions, and supervise local administration. His interest in architecture and Greek culture is reflected in the design of entertainment buildings. Hadrian undertakes the renovation of many amphitheaters, theaters, and odeons, ensuring they are equipped with technical innovations that improve the comfort of the audience and the safety of participants. Hadrian also promotes strict regulation on the frequency and duration of the games to avoid financial excesses that could weaken the imperial treasury and create discord. Sumptuous spending is controlled by edicts reminding magistrates that they must balance the generosity expected with budgetary prudence. Within this framework, the munera retain a cardinal place, but take place under the watchful eyes of imperial representatives tasked with ensuring their proper conduct. The emperor seeks to harmonize the cult of spectacle with an ideal of concordia, rejecting the bloody escalation that sometimes characterized previous reigns. He also supports cultural events inspired by Hellenistic traditions such as musical competitions, rhetorical contests, and athletic events, which take place in public gymnasiums and attract a diverse audience. The Senate, an essential body in the Roman constitution, plays a role of observer and influence during these developments. Senators, mostly from ancient families, judge the emperor and his magistrates based on the gravitas they display in managing spectacles. They also appreciate a prince who defends order and discipline both in the army and in civil society. The knights, on the other hand, aspire to distinguish themselves by their ability to sponsor remarkable events or provide quality materials. The aediles, magistrates organizing the festivities and urban roads, compete to impress the public, aware that the opinion of the plebeians and notables is a stepping stone to higher office. By offering luxurious series of gladiatorial combats or introducing rare beasts into the venatianes, they seek to evoke the crowd's enthusiasm, a guarantee of popularity and political recognition. At the municipal level, eurgetism remains a fundamental pillar of public life. Local elites, eager to ensure the support of their fellow citizens, finance the construction of stone arenas, expand existing enclosures, or commission new architectural decorations. On the walls, inscriptions indicate the donor's name, their past magistracies, and the cost invested in the work, emphasizing public generosity and personal success. In the provinces of proconsular Africa, Gaul, or Asia, this phenomenon is similarly reflected. Cities, proud of their benefactors, compete to display the splendor of their buildings and the regularity of their spectacles. These local strategies align with imperial propaganda, which uses a range of supports to disseminate the image of a strong and united empire. Coins minted in provincial workshops often bear the emperor's effigy with symbols of victory, peace, or abundance. Honorific inscriptions rarely hide their political scope. They praise the piety of the sovereign, his clemency, or his generosity, thus showing his benevolence towards the people. The panegyrics, official speeches delivered during solemn events, weave laudatory narratives to celebrate military triumph or the erection of prestigious monuments. In this vast propagandist theater, the arena and its games prove to be a privileged vector, as they reach both the most modest spectators and the dignitaries. In the vast network of gladiator schools and arenas that spanned the Roman Empire from the 1st century before Christ, the question of equipment remained crucial. The fighters, often from different categories, were equipped with armor and weapons, whose manufacture followed highly codified standards. Leather was most often used as the base for arm and leg protection. Shields, for their part, were made of wood reinforced with metal, while helmets, forged from a more rigid alloy, sometimes sported decorative crests. Beyond the aesthetic aspect, these ornaments signaled the identity and class of the gladiator, an important visual cue for the audience who, from the stands, learned to recognize fighting styles. The concern for effective maintenance led the lanistae to employ specialized craftsmen, blacksmiths for blades, saddlers for leather parts, and carpenters for shields. Repairs, essential after each training session or after battles, required a responsive work chain. Between fights, dented helmets were straightened, straps resewn, and damaged shields replaced or reinforced. This technical standardization helped reduce renewal costs, while ensuring a certain uniformity between competing schools. In the workshops, metal was heated in furnaces fueled by charcoal, highly sought after for its constant heat. Tempering techniques, inherited from innovations discovered during the Iron Age, allowed for more resilient blades and sharper spearheads. Weapons intended for gladiators were not so much designed for military conflicts as they were to provide a balanced spectacle. For example, a secutor, armed with a relatively short gladius and protected by a full helmet, stood in spectacular opposition to the retiarius, equipped with only a net and a trident, without a face-covering helmet. To ensure these duels best captured the audience's attention, it was necessary to have equipment that suggested danger while remaining manageable. Forges sometimes produced standardized thigh armor, as the size of fighters often varied. A captured Gallic slave from the war could be taller than a local conscript, requiring quick adjustments. In larger cities like Rome, Capua, or Ostia, warehouses were dedicated to storing spare parts and raw materials so that Munera organizers could quickly renew their arsenal if needed. The arena itself was a space cleverly designed to host these confrontations. The Romans named harina, the sand covering the ground. This layer, often several centimeters thick, served to absorb not only blood, but also the impact of falls and projectiles. When the public crowded into an amphitheater, the sight of this sandy surface already evoked the idea of the forthcoming fight. Organizers paid great attention to choosing a clear sand, regularly raked, to avoid the appearance of puddles or rocks likely to influence the course of the duel. After each confrontation, servants would spread a fresh layer, erasing the bloody traces, allowing for rapid chaining of one fight to another. In some arenas, notably the Colosseum in Rome or the amphitheater in Verona, trapdoors connected to basements were arranged, from which animals or stage props sometimes emerged. This engineering feat added an unpredictable dimension to the spectacle and heightened the audience's attention. To contain and channel the crowd, amphitheater builders had planned for anti-panic devices, vomitoria, wide, fast exit corridors, allowed spectators to reach the outside quickly. The stands, compartmentalized according to social hierarchy, offered reserved seats for senators, knights, women, and foreign embassies. Many municipal officials ensured that circulation was smooth and that emergency exits were guarded by urban cohorts ready to intervene in the event of a riot. The anxiety of uncontrolled crowd movements sometimes fermented in tense political contexts, where a scuffle could escalate and where the mere tension of a fight judged too violent provoked virulent collective reactions. The architecture of the Roman amphitheater thus not only responded to an aesthetic objective, it also stemmed from technical know-how intended to protect, as much as possible, the thousands of spectators present. On the gladiators' own safety front, the Roman organization was more nuanced. The fights were obviously dangerous, but referees were always positioned near the combatants to prevent excessive brutality or to separate the opponents in case of rule violations. As soon as a serious injury occurred, the duel could be stopped, especially if one of the gladiators was renowned and represented a significant investment for his lanistae. Doctors, known as medici, were also present. They had suturing equipment, bandages, and various herbal remedies partially inherited from Greek, Etruscan, and Celtic traditions. Ancient sources report that mortality rates varied greatly depending on the times and places. During some lavish games offered by ambitious magistrates, the pressure to provide blood to the public could increase the number of deaths. On the other hand, in other contexts, arena athletes fought more cautiously in order to preserve their bodies for future exhibitions. The ratio between the cost of a gladiator and his permanent loss largely influenced the course of the fights. Recruiting, training, and equipping a fighter was a significant financial investment for the lanistae or the game's editor. A seasoned gladiator, capable of regularly defeating several opponents, could sell for a considerable amount, especially if his reputation was such that his name attracted crowds. If this gladiator was grievously injured or killed in the amphitheater, the financial impact was colossal. Therefore, the outcome of a duel was not always death. There existed the possibility of missio, that is, the grace granted to the defeated when the public deemed that the fight had been sufficiently spectacular. The thumbs down or up, a symbol popularized later by modern iconography, actually referred to a more complex set of signals. The editor, in conjunction with the game's prefect, could decide alone on the defeated's survival, but often he complied with the crowd's will to maintain his popularity. Beyond the gross market value, training also represented a significant expense. Gladiator schools employed highly specialized instructors. The Doctores Armorum, for example, initiated novices into defensive and offensive postures, but also into the scenic gestures expected by the spectators. The more a gladiator honed his skills, the more he became a valuable human capital. Consequently, any spectacle organizer sought a delicate balance, providing excitement and pleasure to the audience while avoiding a ruinous bloodbath. Some magistrates, to stand out, nevertheless financed extreme fights, sometimes without the possibility of grace, to make a lasting impression. Between the violence of killings and the preservation of this pool of professionals, the economy of blood proved to be of a very singular complexity. Simultaneously, the contracts and bonuses granted to gladiators controlled the internal organization of the schools. The scales varied according to the fighter's reputation, his record, and the significance of the spectacle in which he participated. For each victory, he was awarded a palm, a symbol of triumph. This distinction, seen by all in the amphitheater, often transformed into money or more precious material gifts. At times, spectators, impressed by the skill of a local hero, would throw him coins, necklaces, or bracelets. Additionally, the editor could offer a crown, an honorary trophy, or provide a financial surplus stipulated in a pre-fight contract. Some gladiators, through their successes, amassed enough earnings to hope to buy their freedom. They then dreamed of receiving the rudies, symbol of their emancipation before everyone. However, the glory was fleeting. A fatal injury in the arena, sudden disfavor from the public, or a patron's bankruptcy could instantly obliterate all hopes. In some provinces, these rewards sometimes adapted to local customs. In Lines, Gaul, or Hispania, prizes in the form of torques or specific coins could be given, reflecting cultural syncretism. But everywhere, the logic remained similar: to reward endurance and to wave the dream of success before the eyes of the populace, even for men doomed to infamy. However, the state and the Senate tried to maintain a legal framework to avoid the explosion of costs that, according to certain moralists, sometimes jeopardized the finances of the cities. Sumptuary laws, promulgated recurrently, aimed to regulate the number of gladiators employed and the duration of the shows. But the magistrates often sought to circumvent these limitations to gain the support of the largest number of inhabitants. The acquisition and transport of exotic animals constituted another expensive aspect of the economy of blood. The venaciones, these hunts within the amphitheater, required bringing lions, tigers, elephants, bears, or even hippopotamuses from distant regions, North Africa, Nubia, or even distant Asia for some rare species. Specialized merchants and traders established real capture networks, often in collaboration with provincial governors who could provide passes. Native hunters first captured the animal, sometimes at the risk of their lives, before passing it on to an intermediary. This intermediary then had to transport the precious cargo to the nearest port, where a ship equipped with makeshift enclosures would be chartered. The sea journey, marked by stopovers to meet the animal's water and food needs, already represented a risky gamble. Diseases, storms, and mutinies could decimate the cargo. Once in the Italian peninsula or in other major urban centers, these exotic animals often passed through warehouses or temporary menageries where they were fed and carefully kept until the day of the games. The logistic cost, added to the purchase price at each stage of the chain, quickly exploded. A healthy lion, capable of roaring for the crowd's thrill, was expensive. An elephant, seen as a nearly mythical curiosity, cost even more. To guard against contingencies, some organizers signed contracts with mercatores venationum, who guaranteed delivery for a fixed fee. The death in transit or the unruliness of an animal could, however, break the contract. Merchants then sought to cover themselves by passing the cost of these risks onto local authorities or organizers. Despite this exorbitant expense, the public's attraction to these distant creatures, which they would never have seen otherwise, justified the enterprise. Over time, the rarity of certain species drove prices up. In regions where wildlife had been overhunted to supply the Venaciones, such as certain areas of Africa after several generations of intensive capture, local authorities had to organize more distant expeditions. Contracts with local tribes could guarantee the capture, but increase the bill for the organizer. True trophies embodying the power of Rome and domination over nature, wild beasts sometimes became the central element of game programs, even surpassing interest in gladiatorial duels. The staging of the cage emerging from the pit, the attack of a beast irresistibly drawn to a living prey. The skill of the bestiarius contributed to a climax where the crowd, exhilarated, acclaimed Roman order triumphing over the world's savagery. The expenses related to the transport of these rare animals, combined with the perpetual maintenance of the infrastructures, weighed heavily on both public and private finances. When emperors organized a cycle of spectacular games to celebrate a military victory or the inauguration of a monument, the scale of the Venations reached its peak. Sources recount entire days when hundreds of wild beasts were slaughtered in the arena, witnessing an extravagance that marked the collective memory. However, these extravagances enhanced the reputation of the emperor or magistrate, who was then presented as the guarantor of Roman prosperity and magnificence. Within society, the blood economy thrived on complex transactions involving the management of human violence as well as the staging of a varied fauna, painting the portrait of an empire that, by its extent, could mobilize the most diverse resources to amaze and frighten its subjects. At the beginning of the 3rd century Anno Domini, the Roman Empire entered a phase of profound political uncertainty, often referred to by historians as the imperial crisis. After the death of Emperor Severus Alexander in 235, a series of soldier emperors succeeded one another at an accelerated pace, supported sometimes by part of the army, sometimes by rival factions. This instability was compounded by increasingly pressing invasions at the borders and internal conflicts that weakened the state. In the cities of the empire, tensions rose. Budgets, already strained by high inflation and the maintenance of numerous armies, suffered severe cuts. The endless wars absorbed a considerable part of the financial resources, inevitably affecting the organization of public spectacles. The aediles and provincial governors, once generous in financing munera or venations, now struggled to find the necessary funds. In some cities, urban tensions exploded, and arenas, places of entertainment, could become centers of unrest if the crowd, frustrated by shortage or unequal distribution, became angry. Authorities tried to maintain these entertainments as they remained an ideological pillar of Roman identity, but the economic reality became more and more constraining. In this context, where public order was under tension, imperial authorities imposed reinforced control over gladiator schools to prevent any attempt at uprising. Since Spartacus's revolt in the 1st century before Christ, Rome maintained a recurring distrust regarding the possible militarization of the ludi. In the 3rd century, this concern grew with the era's instability. A group of trained fighters, gathered under a charismatic leader, could become a source of revolt. Guards stationed around the schools multiplied, and lanistae were often subjected to stricter inspections. They were required to provide precise accounts on their numbers, the identity of the gladiators, and their sources of funding. Some cities adopted internal regulations to limit the mobility of these troops, fearing they might serve as instruments for the political ambitions of a general or a rebellious governor. In many schools, internal authority became stricter. The discipline, already severe, was burdened with measures intended to prevent any escape or complicity with the outside. The figure of the emperor, more than ever associated with the role of protector soldier, imparted a martial tone to public life as a whole. Emperors like Maximinus Thrax or Aurelian were former officers close to their troops, and they frequently sought legitimacy through belligerent rhetoric. Within the spectacles themselves, a certain hardening was observed. On one hand, confrontations were sometimes highlighted as a demonstration of Roman strength, echoing military propaganda. On the other hand, the scarcity of expensive beasts and the multiplication of internal conflicts could lead some ambitious organizers to bet on more violent staging to impress the audience. Historians debate the real extent of this brutalization. In some regions, it is noted that aedles would simply choose themes celebrating recent victories or the emperor on campaign without radically transforming the nature of the spectacle. Elsewhere, particularly in the frontier provinces, there was a desire to showcase Rome's strength in the face of the enemy, even if it meant toughening the image of duels and the punishments inflicted on prisoners of war. Despite the crisis, the arenas continue to operate in much of the empire. In the cities of Gaul, for example, the amphitheaters of Nimes or Arles remain active and seek to perpetuate the tradition. The municipal elites, who often retain a status as notables, still finance munera to bring the population together around festive events, thus avoiding total discouragement in the face of difficult news from the borders. Similarly, in the provinces of Africa, some imposing edifices, like that of Thesdrus, do not immediately cease their activities. We know from inscriptions that representatives of the local nobility continued to offer gladiator or beast shows there, despite the troubled times. This continuity is symptomatic of a certain attachment to Roman identity. In an uncertain world, the games recall the past glory of the empire and strengthen social cohesion around common rights. However, a shift is occurring. The priority given to the army and fortifications increasingly outweighs the organization of spectacular events. The new needs of the central power, troop pay, weapons production, fortress maintenance, shift the financial center of gravity. The traditional beneficiaries of public munificence, such as game organizers, find themselves having to further justify their expenses before administrative bodies. The praetorian prefects, having become extremely powerful in the hierarchical chain, demand better control of budgetary flows. Many magistrates, to maintain the favor of the people, try to uphold subsidized distributions of bread or oil at the expense of more elaborate spectacles. Each city adopts its own way of reconciling these demands, creating a very heterogeneous landscape across the empire. Some cities maintain relative splendor, others drastically reduce the number of performances. In several cities of the empire, legislative measures begin to regulate expenses, the workforce, and the status of those condemned to the arena. The stated goal is to curb wasteful tendencies and gratuitous violence while avoiding upsetting the crowd and compromising social order. Some legal texts, like those later compiled in the Theodosian Code, specify that the use of the condemned to fuel the combats or beasts must follow stricter criteria. The aim is to reserve these spectacular punishments for the most dangerous criminals, thus limiting the flow of innocents, or people not deserving such an extreme fate. Other laws attempt to restrict the number of days of games to contain costs, as the gladiator market, already expensive, now faces a strained economic context, particularly in some provinces threatened by external incursions. Meanwhile, the Church Fathers, who are establishing themselves as spiritual guides of a growing Christian community, deliver increasingly virulent speeches against the arena. Some, like Lactantius, express indignation at the inherent cruelty of duels, which they consider unworthy of a society that claims evangelical compassion. Others, in the Augustinian tradition, condemn the games as a manifestation of idolatry, referring to the homage rendered to emperors or other pagan deities still celebrated within the context of the spectacles. They see it as a survival of polytheism incompatible with Christian faith. This moral pressure, combined with the growing influence of the bishops, weighs on the civil authorities who sometimes seek to show their goodwill, if not their zeal, by regulating the holding of spectacles. Nonetheless, the audience is not always ready to give up this piece of cultural identity, and many regions continue to honor the tradition of the arena. During this period, the amphitheaters themselves begin to change function, at least partially. In several localities, the stands, once full of eager spectators, appear abandoned over the decades. Economic and military imperatives transform these vast enclosures into workshops, warehouses, or temporary housing. In some cases, the arena is repurposed as a place of craftsmanship, where workers make and store products for everyday life. New openings are made in the walls and shops set up there. Sometimes stone blocks are reclaimed for other construction projects. Thus, under the combined effect of a gradual decline in combats and growing economic pressure, the grand spectacle architecture is slowly transformed into a utilitarian space. In major cities like Rome or Constantinople, the gradual shift towards other forms of spectacle continues. Chariot races, prone to faction rivalries, and under the aegis of imperial powers, sometimes take over, attracting a massive audience. They prove to be less bloody than Munera, and are less likely to provoke the disapproval of the church, even if the violence between supporters can be formidable. Notables who wish to provide strong emotions to the people now increasingly rely on the hippodrome rather than the amphitheater, slowly but surely marginalizing gladiatorial duels. At the beginning of the 5th century, the Western Roman Empire faces political and military upheavals that will profoundly alter urban life and forms of entertainment. Barbarian invasions, civil wars, and the weakening of imperial authority contribute to reducing the financial resources necessary for the organization of Munera, these once highly prized gladiator shows. At the same time, the church, becoming increasingly influential, exerts ever stronger moral pressure against displays of public violence. Several times, partial or temporary bans are proclaimed to curb these bloody games, notably under the reigns of certain Christian emperors keen on projecting an image of piety. The legendary gesture of a monk named Telemachus is often cited, who, according to some late antique authors, attempted to stop a combat in the arena before being killed. Even if the exact authenticity of this episode remains debated by historians, it illustrates the changing spiritual and social climate emerging in the western part of the empire. Local elites, once proud to fund grandiose spectacles to assert their prestige, struggle to maintain this model of ostentatious redistribution as they are hit hard by the economic crisis. As a result, there is a progressive scarcity of gladiator combats, coupled with a shift in public taste. Urban audiences are becoming less receptive to these violent demonstrations. The last explicit mentions of organized combats in the West occur in the first half of the 5th century, when documents still refer to rare confrontations intended to celebrate military victories or local events. Thereafter, sources become silent, or only evoke memories of bygone times, indicating that Munera are no longer part of daily reality in most Western cities. This decline is not as abrupt in the Eastern Empire, where other forms of spectacle persist, such as chariot races in the Hippodrome of Constantinople, heirs of a long tradition of urban competitions. The races, supported by rival factions, generate considerable popular fervor, even if gladiatorship as a whole gradually loses its footing. While armed confrontations become rarer in the eastern provinces, public hunts, or venationes, still take place, featuring the killing of wild beasts, but their frequency also decreases. Roman buildings designed to host gladiatorial combats, such as amphitheaters, were then subject to multiple reassignments. Some became stone quarries, where construction materials and ornamental blocks were extracted. In certain cities, the stands were reused to erect new religious buildings, or the arena was converted into a residential area or a fortification, addressing the defensive needs of populations in the face of ambient insecurity. This physical transformation of places reflects a social and symbolic evolution. The spot that was once the theater of warrior virtues now becomes a support for Christian piety or daily survival. Urban transformations are accompanied by a progressive fossilization of public memory concerning gladiators, who are no longer represented in common iconography, except when recalling a past judged as barbaric. Over the course of the 5th century, Christian authors composed sermons and hagiographical stories, in which physical combat is transfigured into a spiritual struggle, opposing the believer to demonic forces. Gladiators, considered as emblems of a bloody paganism, sometimes become allegorical figures. In some stories of martyrs, their violence is evoked to highlight the courage of saints, confronted with soulless brutes. Concurrently, the rare echoes preserved in legal texts show that local and imperial authorities continued to impose restrictions against gladiatorial spectacles without always achieving a total and definitive ban. Moral and religious motivations go hand in hand with material imperatives. The recruitment of gladiators, their training, the management of wild animals, and the maintenance of infrastructures required a budget that most municipalities could no longer afford. Gradually, the spectacle industry as it existed in the 3rd and 4th centuries dwindled due to a lack of financing and popular enthusiasm, while craftsmen specialized in the manufacture or repair of gladiator equipment redirected into other trades. The ludi, that is to say, the gladiator schools, gradually ceased their activity. The lack of fights to organize and the drop in available numbers no longer justified maintaining entire teams of doctores, lanistae, and instructors. Here and there, some vestiges of such institutions persist, but they soon become anecdotal. There are records of equipment sales to collectors, official donations to military officers, or equipment transformed into funerary trophies. For those who still hope to shine in the arena, the choice drastically narrowed. Volunteers, sometimes driven by adventure or misery, might try to perform in clandestine circles, but this phenomenon remains marginal and very poorly attested by sources. In this universe undergoing reconfiguration, the agonistic tradition does not entirely disappear. There are sometimes anecdotal ceremonial jousts, or martial confrontations more akin to military demonstrations than commercial spectacles, especially during local festivities. Several ecclesiastical laws insist on the importance of redirecting crowds towards less violent celebrations, favoring religious processions, solemn services, and the veneration of holy relics, reflecting a triumphant Christian sacrality. The imperial authorities, whose power declines in the face of invasions, rely on the support of the Church to maintain relative social cohesion, and thus accommodate the gradual disappearance of the munera, symbols of a past now deemed obsolete. In the Eastern Roman Empire, the focus shifts to the hippodrome, where competition becomes less bloody, even if violent riots can break out between rival factions, as evidenced by the famous Nika revolt under Justinian in the 6th century. In the weakened and fragmented West, circuses persist in a few large cities, but they are largely supplanted by defensive concerns and the development of new centers of power controlled by barbarian kingdoms. Stonemasons, blacksmiths, and armorers who once lived off gladiator gradually find other opportunities in serving new royal courts or maintaining ordinary military armaments. In the heart of these ever-changing ruins, oral tradition still perpetuates a few fragments of ancient tales. Some medieval chroniclers still mention ancient violent celebrations, adorned with exotic animals or armed confrontations, without having the precise sources or the necessary archaeological knowledge to contextualize these allusions. For many centuries, the reappropriation of amphitheaters thus occurs in relative ignorance of their previous use. New generations see in these colossal structures, sometimes partially collapsed, both a testament to past grandeur and the possibility of constructing new fortified spaces. In some cases, local lords seize the arenas to house their troops or store supplies, thus contributing to the resurrection of a form of armed spectacle, no longer intended to entertain, but to defend the places. This accidental reinvention is generally not accompanied by a desire to study or celebrate the Roman heritage, which remains relegated to the background of political and military concerns. At the end of the Middle Ages, however, a budding interest in Roman antiquity appears in some learned circles. Italian scholars, often close to princely courts, gradually rediscover Latin authors and begin to compare ancient texts with visible remains in the peninsula. In the 15th century, the rise of humanism places the individual at the center of reflection while promoting a return to so-called classical sources, notably those of Rome and ancient Greece. Scholars such as Poggio Bracciolini or Flavio Biondo travel across Italy to catalog the ruins, compiling descriptions of monuments degraded by the centuries in their manuscripts. Although their historical sensitivity remains partial and sometimes tinged with legends, they strive to match the texts of Cicero, Livy, or Suetonius with the stone structures still standing. This approach raises numerous questions regarding the initial function of each site, prompting humanists to formulate sometimes hazy hypotheses about gladiatorial games or beast spectacles. They often draw moralizing judgments, considering these entertainments incompatible with the values of the era, now governed by a Christian vision marked by the critique of violence. Gradually, humanists of the 15th and early 16th centuries undertake attempts at reconstruction. They seek to imagine the exact unfolding of the ludi described by Latin authors, sometimes venturing to draw sketches or write treatises aimed at evoking the supposedly lost splendor of ancient Rome. The use of wood or copper engraving promotes the dissemination of these early archaeological researches, which remain nonetheless imperfect. Artists and scholars, driven by a sincere curiosity, willingly overlay their Renaissance aesthetic criteria onto historical reality, resulting in idealized scenes where architectural splendor outweighs detail accuracy. Travel accounts, in turn, gain popularity in major cities in Italy, France, and the German-speaking countries, spurring the emergence of a rudimentary form of visual archaeology. Curious visitors travel to these places to contemplate the great amphitheaters and gather their own observations. Often, they transcribe in their notebooks various anecdotes, sometimes stemming from popular tradition, thus feeding a collection of disparate information where authentic descriptions, moral prejudices, and mythical reminiscences intermingle. These initial descriptions, sometimes accompanied by engravings, contribute to the formation of several enduring myths. Among these is the famous question of the thumbs up or down, supposedly determining the fate of the defeated gladiator, which many Renaissance artists depict by exaggerating hand gestures. These works often rely on imprecise literary sources, leading to the popular belief that Roman crowds, and later their medieval or Renaissance heirs, consistently demanded the execution of fighters. In reality, the modalities of the thumbs up or down remain complex and subject to debate, as ancient texts are not unequivocal about the exact meaning of the gestures. Lacking both a comprehensive philological documentation and access to the remains in their entirety, many authors of the time thus spread the image of omnipresent barbarity in the arenas. This simplified narrative concerning the extent of violence or the frequency of executions deeply roots itself in the European collective unconscious, to the point of forging a stereotype of a bloody arena that will endure well beyond the Renaissance. In parallel, a taste for collection affirms itself in aristocratic and princely circles that support the burgeoning arts and sciences. Objects allegedly from the arenas, such as ornate helmets, swords, or shields, are sought to adorn cabinets of curiosities. However, many medieval or Oriental objects are misleadingly labeled as Roman, merely out of an attraction to the exotic or ignorance of historical authenticity. This trend intensifies as the embryonic museography of the Renaissance develops. Rooms are dedicated to the memory of antiquity, without any solid methodology yet in place to distinguish the true from the false. Patron princes, eager to enhance their prestige, sometimes acquire supposed gladiatorial weapons to assert their anchorage in the Roman imagination. Yet many of these pieces do not directly come from excavations. They result instead from accidental finds or commercial exchanges conducive to the circulation of forgeries. In this context, the terms lanistae or rudis gradually reappear in learned treatises, mixing authentic references and fanciful extrapolations. The diffusion of these specialized terms marks a turning point in the partial understanding of the gladiatorial world by Renaissance Europeans. Through these lexical reappropriations, scholars attempt to explain the role of the lanistae, the stakes of the rudis, or the structure of a schola gladiatoria, while projecting onto antiquity their own moral visions. Without a rigorous historical method, they nevertheless lay the first foundations of a museography with scholarly purpose, mixing art, curiosity, and a quest for authenticity. At this stage, the arena mostly remains a symbol of a militaristic Rome, a source of fascination and moral reserve, foreshadowing the future controversies of the modern era. Scholarly questioning gradually clarifies.